thank you so much for inviting me to come. I just love being with you. I really do. And thank you, Teresa, for all the way that you've, your leadership, because, and the rest of you. I mean, I know you can't do it without a team. And you guys are absolutely amazing. I'm going to turn this just a little bit because I could have an embarrassing trip. And I don't mean a vacation. But, wow, worship was on point. So on point. It's like you rode up in the car with me. Yeah. Well, You know, let's just take one more step even deeper. He gives strength to me as I worship him, and my mouth is filled with praise. Anybody know this? Jesus breaks the bands as I raise my hands, bringing glorious liberty. Oh, you give strength to me as I worship you, and my mouth is filled with praise. Jesus breaks the bands as I raise my hands, bringing glorious liberty. Jesus, your presence makes all the difference in the world, all the difference. It's your presence. We thank you for that. So we give ourselves even more to your presence. We might be shifting gears, but we're not shifting away. We're shifting in closer, in tighter with your heart. Thank you, Jesus. Amen. Well, let's just pull up some notes here. That helps me. Just going to do a little bit of an advertisement for your upcoming conference and tell you, don't miss it. Invite everybody you know, because you guys all know, well, many of you know Patricia King, you wouldn't be having her. And I'm not quite as familiar with her ministry, although I know the caliber of woman that she is. I know her integrity. I know that she champions people just like us. and that I've heard that over and over, and I have heard her. But I want to make mention of Joshua Mills, because there is no, Patricia's not taking a front row seat and he's in the back. They're equal. I'm telling you, this is something for them together. I just had Joshua's wife, Janet, for my last women's encounter. Not only was she just came with a fresh word, anointed, prepared, but her life just spoke volumes to me. She spent time in my home. She brought her kids. She trusted she trusted me enough to bring her kids into my house. And those daughters of hers were amazing. And then I had just a sweet surprise, and that was that Joshua came to town to minister at the healing rooms. Janet had been invited, but Joshua came too, and they all came to my house for lunch. And I'm telling you, top-notch people, the real deal, the absolute real deal. And just a funny story about Joshua Mills is I was in Ashland, Virginia at Calvary Campground, which was Ruth Heflin's ministry, which I always am talking about. but I was in winter camp. It was 2016, and he was reading a passage from Ruth Heflin's book, Glory, where a young man in Jerusalem in their prayer gathering there, prayer ministry there, described the glory coming down like marshmallow. And all of a sudden, Joshua started laughing, and he was going, ha, 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 marshmallow glory, marshmallow glory. And he's going around. He walks up the aisle, and I'm sitting like maybe 2 or 3 seats in, and he goes, marshmallow glory. And I didn't just fall out of my chair. I flopped out like a fish, like up and down and all over. And I mean, it was like electric shocks going through my body. And being at a Pentecostal campground, I never saw more coats and blankets come land on me, you know, because they wanted to cover me right up. But that night, I had stammering lips. Do you know what that is? You ever had that? Where I kept trying to tell my brother Paul something about something he said, and I kept going, and then the whole night I could not talk to him. I was so wrecked. But, you know, and that was my first encounter, really, with Joshua Mills, was that winter camp. But since then, his ministry, I have gleaned from it over and over and over again. And so much that I even had a dream once when I was in Hawaii, and I dreamt that Ruth Heflin was driving my car, and that's a pretty cool thing. And I looked over her and I said, you've impacted my life more than any other person besides Joshua Mills. And I thought, well, you know, and I thought it was just really funny that I would dream something like that. But the people that God allows to minister to you and brings into your focus, that's important. Pay attention, and especially if you have dreams and there is an individual, it doesn't, if they're well known, ask God, what do they represent? If it's somebody you know or somebody you don't know, all those things mean something. So when I dreamt that Joshua Mills meant something to me, I knew that meant the glory means something to me. You know, and who was it that prophesied in the back room before about eternity in your heart? Was it you? About God's put eternity in your heart? I don't know. Oh, I can't remember. Was it you? Okay. That was like fuel for me. All of it was, but that one really, because that is my core. Everything I do is out of that place of that understanding of eternity being in my heart. It's like that drives me, because that's all about the glory of God. That's all about the presence of God. It's the atmosphere of heaven on earth. It's everything. You understand? And God has placed eternity in the hearts of man, and all we have to do is go and unlock them and wake them up into it. And watch what will happen. Talk about revival. You know, we just unlock that eternal place that's already there. Anyway, I want to talk about a familiar topic. It's overcoming. And if that hasn't been beat to death, you know, there's songs about it, there's sermons about it, there's keys to it, there's all kinds of things. And I thought, no, God, you're not going to have me talk about overcoming. They've heard that every one of them could preach to circles around you about overcoming. But he wouldn't let me let it go, as always. And I'm going to tell you, let me just say this. I'm not telling you something you don't already know. Sometimes a message is to fuel you, kind of flag you on the course that you're already on, to remind you of what you already have learned, to add maybe a new slant on it, and also to give you language when you're talking with other people about this sort of thing. Because as you know, I'm a big storyteller, and I create visuals and give you something to hold on to that says, oh, now I know how to think about that. So anyway, I was in New Hampshire. This was at least 15 years ago. And I had gone with a group from the state of Maine. We were going to this ski resort. It was in the summer, and they had like a fairground. And we were going to a Christian music festival for all of New England. We had big bands, Skillet, and I don't remember what the bands were, but they had some good ones. But I didn't care about that because I was going to help serve in this prophetic tent. We set up a big white tent, put out a sign, said prophetic prayer. And we let people from all over, whether they were familiar with this topic or not, line up and get prophetic words. So we had a huge team where we did rotations for hours a day for this whole event. So I arrived there, and we're camping too. That's the other part. And I pull up. Oh, somebody's trying to call me. I have my phone on Do Not Disturb. How does that happen? Anyway, we arrived, and I get out of my car, and the pastor's wife from New Hampshire, who was heading up this whole thing, she said to me, well, the word for the weekend is we're going to be overcomers. And I said, oh, that means we're going to have something to overcome, right? So let's just get real. No sooner had I got those words out of my mouth, and it began to rain, torrential rain, like pouring down. We had tents to set up, and we had a timeline. We had to get up to the big tent that fortunately was already set up to set up to do the ministry. And I was soaking wet, just drenched from head to toe, and I could barely keep my belongings dry as I set up my tent. Fortunately, I'm a seasoned camper, and I managed to keep my stuff dry. I don't know how that happened, really, because it was pretty bad. And not only that, we had tornado warnings, and then we had a tornado. But it didn't hit us. It was nearby, but we did have microbursts, hail, wind, lightning, thunder. And we're on this mountain. And the last place you want to be is up high in one of these, right? And surrounded by huge trees, like these. Anyway, and you're thinking, my tent is right on the root system. If one of those gets struck by lightning, and I thought, well, what a better way to die, serving the Lord. But that's how it was incredible. Then it gets, I wouldn't say worse, but it just kept going. It rained so hard that all the fairgrounds were it was just a big mud. It was like we were in like a pig pen of mud. And I'm telling you, it was like up to here, up to my knees. And so I go up to the fairgrounds. First thing I did is step into that mud up, and I was shocked that it pulled me up to my knees. I had to get somebody to come and help pull me out, and it was sucking on you. I lost my shoes. And I think most of us lost our shoes, so we just started going barefoot. It was summer, so. But anyway, we had to overcome, right? That was just an interesting experience. Now, I'm going to talk about John 16:33. And Jesus makes this statement. He goes, "These things I have spoken to you, that in me you may have peace. In the world you will have tribulation or trouble, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world." Okay, beautiful verse, right? Okay, now this is John 16. And if you have read the book of John, which I'm sure you have, you know that beginning at chapter 13 all the way up through 17 is his last discourse. This is the night, the final session. It's got the Last Supper, and put it in context. The disciples and all of his followers, all of the world at that time, were on the brink of what would appear to be the biggest tragedy, the biggest loss, the most intense grief, fear, and fearing for their lives, and not really understanding what was next. So this is the context of him saying this. Let's read it again. These things, meaning all the things that he just warned them about. All the things that he warned them about. He said, I'm going away. And he said, some of you are going to walk away. Some of you will betray me. And they're like, no, what are you talking about, Jesus? Like you're the best thing that's ever happened to us. You can't be for real. Even the verse right before 33, it says, indeed, the hour is coming, yes, has now come, that you will be scattered, each to his own, and you'll leave me alone. What? And yet I am not alone because the Father is with me. And I say these things because so that in me you may have peace. Okay, this is so cryptic, right? But be of good cheer, I've overcome the world. Now at that point, wouldn't you think that him saying, you're going to have trouble, right? But I've overcome the world. That would be like, I was saying to Jane on the way up, we were hashing it out. I said, imagine, Jane, that, who was who in that story? I don't remember. But I was broken. Okay, imagine I'm very sickly, that I've battled all kinds of health problems, and now I'm on my third bout with cancer. Okay, and then Jane goes, cheer up, Sharon. She goes, I'm perfectly healthy. Like, get out of town. No, I don't care about your health. I'm the sick one here. And he's saying, be of good cheer about the tribulation and the trials that are coming your way, because I've overcome. It's like, okay, good for you, Jesus. You've overcome. What has that got to do with me? That you have overcome. Well, the key is when you back up, he says, I've said these things that in me you may have peace. That's the key. He's saying it's in me. And, sometimes we go, what does that, how do we get in him? How did that happen? Well, most of us I did this with Healing Room's kids. She knows. And we had the kids, what I had them do is to picture, or to share, they shared an issue they had. One girl said, I've struggled with math and I'm afraid I'm going to stay back. Somebody else was, I don't know, there were different fears. And what was my fear? What did I say? Do you remember? I can't remember. But it was something that one kid had fear of spiders. There were just different things. And I said, now imagine a room with Jesus. And he's like your mom. Like when you're home, you can eat your mom's food. You can sit on your mom's furniture and you're perfectly safe. Everything's good. Well, Jesus is like that. It's like your safe place. And I said, and I had the rug on the floor, and I said, now stand outside the rug. You're outside the room, and you're with your fear. You're with your problem. But all of a sudden, you step in to him, and your problem might not be gone, but suddenly it's in perspective to who he is and what he wants to do through that. And you may come out of that problem, but you could be like Paul the apostle and always have this thorn in the flesh, but you gotta have peace. That's how you overcome. It isn't always that the problem goes away. It's that you are able to function beyond the presence of that problem. And that leads me to this one other thing. It has to do with Joshua Mills again, because of his significance in my life, I had this dream. And just to give you context before I tell you the dream, I was getting ready to go do some ministry in Maryland with his friend Joanne. And I'd been there before, but we weren't really too familiar with each other yet. I was just kind of entering into this. So I'm asking the Lord what to share, and I wasn't really sensing a whole lot. I got to be honest, and I thought, I can't go there with no word. So I'm praying about it, and God gave me a dream. And in the dream, I'm driving in the car with my friend. I'm getting ready to get in the car with my friend Joanne. In the dream, I'm in Maryland. We're getting ready to go to this conference center where we're going to do some ministry. And all of a sudden, another woman is driving the car. And she's not very nice. She said, "Get in the back." And so I get in the back seat, and I'm thinking, this isn't the way I expected it to be. And we're going along, and all of a sudden, it's not even them driving anymore. In fact, they're nowhere in my dream. It's now a family member of mine, and she's driving like this. She's back too, and she's going like this, and looking in a mirror here, and she's knitting at the same time. And then I look out, and I realize we're on icy main roads. And I said, "What are you doing?" And she said, "I'm multitasking." And I said, and I said, "I'm supposed to be in Maryland." And I don't know whether that was an anxiety dream, a fear dream, or what that was. It could have been, but God used it, because as soon as I said, "I'm supposed to be in Maryland," I was back in Maryland. And I was with Joanne, and she was driving, and we pulled into this little farmhouse, or just this little ranch-style house, and went inside. We were going to meet some people that were speaking at the conference. And in this humble little home, sitting at the kitchen table, was Joshua Mills. And he said, I sat down, and he said, "The word for today is relax." And then I knew he was talking about John 1:4. And this is what John 1:4 says. "In him was light." Light. "In him was light, and in him was life, and that life was the light of man." Let's get that right. In him was life, and that life was the light of men. Okay, so I thought, well, what has that got to do with relax? But I realized it's just like what I said about overcoming. Coming into that place of peace, coming into his presence, and just relaxing and knowing that God can take control. But we have to come into that place. In fact, if going back to John 16:33, I think it's so interesting. He also says, "I've spoken this to you, that in me you may have peace." It means he's given you permission. It's an invitation, but we have to accept it. You may have this if you come into me. Because he says, here's the promise. In the world, you're going to have trouble. So there's no avoiding that. But he's saying, I have an answer. Come into me and you may have peace. He said, in him is life, and his life is your light. And you can relax because you can see. And I want to go one step further. I should do this with the kids next week, because I never had them flip on the light switch when they walked in the room. They walked in. Now, when we think about Jesus being the light, and about the darkness can't overcome it, right? A lot of times we're thinking about sin or brokenness, things like that. But have you ever tried to read the instructions to something in the dark? Can you see? No. Can you find your way? I know when I was a kid, my sister and I, we used to close our eyes and walk around like we were blind, trying to see how well we could do, But that's what we do in life sometimes. We walk around with the light switch off. But when we come into Jesus, flip on the light switch and look around. Let him show you whether it's a strategy. It might be the answer to a question you have. It might be just, I want to sit here with you in this. Because some things, if you've lost a loved one, they're not coming back. And he wants to sit with you through the grieving process. There are things that can't be reversed, right? And then there are miracles that he wants to do in our lives. There's just a myriad of troubles and things that we have just because we live on this earth. especially in the political climate that we live in. Things are really, some things are looking good, some things are looking still kind of like, whoa, what was that? You know, it is, we live in scary times if we let the fear overtake us. But we're not going to do that, are we? Because it says in him we live. It's in Acts 17:28. I love that. In him we live and move and have our being. That's where we find ourselves. It's where we find him. It's where we find the strength and the wisdom, the understanding to tackle the things that get thrown at us in life. That's what overcoming is. Because if it was about him fixing every issue, every time that an issue didn't get fixed, we'd throw in the towel. We're not going to throw in the towel. We're going to grow up in him to a place where we say, Jesus, I love you, I trust you, you are my Lord, you're going to be with me for the long haul. We're in it for the long haul. We're in it for eternity. Oh my goodness, and I don't understand this, and I crave to understand. Someone else prayed over me about understanding, about wondering things or needing to know, wanting to know things, and I am always forever asking questions and say, about understanding God's ways, understanding the whys, like healing. Isn't that a quandary? We got to admit it. It's a quandary. Some people get healed and others we don't see it. But eternity, that's such a different perspective. I know that it is. I can't even articulate it, but I know that it is. That God sees things from beginning to end. And he's put that desire, that awareness in our hearts. And see, it's all about in him. That's it. That is the answer. So just for a minute, I want you to think of something that is difficult for you to tackle. Just something where you need overcoming. Now I want you to picture yourself stepping into a room with Jesus. And first, let his peace come and just give you a breath of fresh air. Just relax into it. Turn on the light switch and look around with the eyes of the Spirit. And some of you are seeing things, or you're actually even hearing things, or just suddenly knowing things. A scripture coming to mind. His encouragement. Awareness of his love. Remembering his promise to you. Some of you are getting an idea right now of when you leave here and go home, you're going to do da-da-da. Begin the steps towards resolution of a situation. And it's as simple as coming into a room with Jesus and letting him be the light on the subject. Bringing revelation and answers where we need them, comfort where we need it, strength and tenacity. In him we overcome. When we walk into that room with him, everything that he is, everything that he has, every bit of wisdom, every bit of power belongs to us. So yes, we are overcomers. No matter what the situation. Let him define overcoming for you. Some people will try to put on to you their idea of what it means for you to overcome. They mean well, but only God knows. And he can tell you to. I mean, he can speak through people. But mostly you need to hear God. God's perspective, his light. He is the light. And I'm just going to change up some words here and say, when we walk into the room, everything changes. See that? When we walk into the room where he is, he's already walked into the room where we are. But when we walk into the room with him and we find ourselves with him, when we walk into the room, only a few things change. No, everything changes. Darkness starts to tremble at the light that he brings. When we walk into the room, we gain new understanding. All the lies of the enemy, they fade away. When we walk into the room, we know we have the tools. We know we have the keys to overcome anything. Do you see that? You see that? Yeah. It's just so simple and so powerful. I needed this. I'm preaching to myself right here. I was telling Jane on the way up, and I know probably a lot of people have expressed to you, why am I coming to preach at the generals? I mean, they're generals. But you know what? We're all in this together, aren't we? We're all in this together.